On a narrow ridge above the Pacific Ocean, a palace watches the water. Stone towers, red tile roofs, arches lifted from another world. It looks ancient. It is not. It looks inevitable. It was anything but. This is Hearst Castle, San Simeon, a place built to feel timeless. But it was born from obsession. Before the towers, there was only a hill, dry grass, wind, the smell of salt and cattle. William Randolph Hearst knew this place as a child. His father owned the land, a ranch, remote, unimpressive, but the view mattered. From the hilltop, the Pacific stretches without interruption. No cities, no harbors, just distance. Hearst remembered it as freedom, as control, as escape. Years later, with money few people could comprehend, he returned, not to build a house, to build a world. The plan was never clear. Not at first. Hearst did not arrive with blueprints and limits. He arrived with images. Castles in Spain, cathedrals in Italy, cloisters taken stone by stone from Europe. He wanted all of it, at once, and he wanted it on a hill where nothing had ever stood before. To make this real, he chose an architect who did not intimidate easily, Julia Morgan. She was precise, methodical, patient. She would need to be. Hearst did not want a finished design. He wanted a process, a living thing he could reshape endlessly. Morgan would draw. Hearst would revise, then revise again. There was no final version, only continuation. Construction began in 1919. The location made everything harder. No nearby city, no port, no easy roads. Materials came by ship, then by rail, then by truck, then by hand. Stone, steel, tile, wood, everything climbed the hill slowly. Everything cost more than planned. Hearst Castle was never meant to be modest. The main house rose first, La Casa Grande, inspired by Spanish cathedrals, twin towers, a bell tower modeled after one in Ronda. But this was not a church. It was a stage. Inside, the scale overwhelms. Ceilings taken from monasteries. Wood panels, older than the nation itself. Fireplaces built for rooms that rarely needed heat. Hearst bought pieces of Europe and reassembled them here. Not replicas, originals, altars, doors, ceilings, entire rooms. Shipped across an ocean, each piece carried history, and each piece erased another, removed from its original place, detached from its meaning, recast as property. Here, they did not belong to the past. They belonged to Hearst. Then came the pools. The Neptune pool sits open to the sky. Marble columns line the edge. Statues watch the water. It looks ancient. It is younger than most highways. The marble came from Italy, some carved centuries earlier, reused, recut, repositioned. The pool leaked for years. It was rebuilt again and again. Cost did not stop the work, only dissatisfaction. Below it, the Roman pool. Gold tile, blue glass, a room designed to feel eternal. It took years to complete. Every tile placed by hand, every tile paid for. The labor never stopped. Hundreds of workers lived nearby. Carpenters, stonecutters, plasterers, electricians. They worked 6 days a week, often more. The hill was unforgiving. Heat, wind, dust. Injuries happened. Records exist. Names rarely do. The castle was not one building. It was many. Guest houses spread across the hill, each with a name, each with staff, each larger than most American homes, many unfinished. Hearst entertained constantly. Actors, politicians, writers, power brokers. They arrived by invitation. They stayed by permission. Schedules were strict. Breakfast at a set hour. Dinner formal. Nothing accidental. Guests did not sit where they wished. Hearst chose who sat near him, who sat far away. Power arranged itself around the table. Below the spectacle, the machinery worked. Kitchens ran all day. Laundry never stopped. Food arrived in bulk, wine by the case. Servants moved through corridors designed to hide them, seen only when needed, invisible when not. The castle functioned like a small city. Electric generators, Water systems, heating. Every system demanded attention. Every system demanded money. Hearst watched everything. He wrote letters, hundreds of them, to his architect, to managers, to suppliers. He wanted control, not efficiency. He changed his mind often. A staircase moved, a wall rebuilt, a pool redesigned. Finished did not interest him, only better. As years passed, the castle grew, and so did the bills. Hearst was wealthy beyond measure. But even wealth has edges. The world outside the hill changed. Markets shifted. Wars came. Empires cracked. The castle kept rising anyway, stone by stone, dollar by dollar. Many rooms were never completed. Walls left bare. Plans abandoned mid-thought. Construction slowed, then resumed, then slowed again. The dream expanded faster than reality could support. From the hill, the view never changed. The ocean kept moving. The horizon stayed distant. The castle watched. Magnificent, heavy, unfinished, a monument to appetite. And this was only the beginning. To understand why this place exists, you must understand the man who demanded it. And the power that made it possible. William Randolph Hearst did not begin as a builder. He began as a son, born into money, born into leverage, born into expectation. His father, George Hearst, made a fortune in mining, silver, gold, land, the kind of wealth that reshapes landscapes. By the time William inherited it, the money was already vast. But money was not the point, never the point. Hearst wanted something harder, influence, not the kind that fades when the checkbook closes, the kind that changes how people think. He found it in newspapers, in ink, in headlines, in repetition. At the height of his power, Hearst controlled dozens of newspapers, magazines, wire services. Millions of Americans read his words every day, often without realizing they were his. He learned early what worked: fear, outrage, drama. Stories were shaped to provoke emotion, not reflection. Enemies were exaggerated, allies elevated, complexity simplified. Truth, when inconvenient, adjusted. Hearst did not invent this model, but he perfected it. Power followed. Politicians courted him. Presidents listened. Governments watched. He could ruin reputations. He could elevate unknowns. He could start wars in the public imagination long before armies moved. With power came appetite for attention, for admiration, for control. Hearst was not satisfied with influence at a distance. He wanted to be seen. The castle was part of that, but it was not the first expression. Hearst collected everything: art, furniture, books, tapestries, ceilings, not selectively, relentlessly. He bought entire collections in a single transaction. If a dealer hesitated, Hearst raised the offer. If a monastery resisted, intermediaries were found. Europe, shaken by war and debt, sold its past. Hearst bought it. The scale mattered. He was not curating, he was accumulating. Rooms were filled faster than they could be designed. Warehouses overflowed. Objects waited years for placement. Some never found a home at all. Ownership came first. Meaning came later, if it came at all. Hearst Castle became storage with ambition, a place to hold the evidence of power. Hearst did not live alone. He was surrounded constantly. Assistants, editors, managers, guests. Silence made him uneasy. He demanded loyalty, not disagreement. He wanted agreement, delivered confidently. Doubt was tolerated only when framed as admiration. Those who served him learned quickly. Hearst rewarded obedience. He punished resistance quietly. A demotion, a reassignment, an invitation that never came again. He rarely raised his voice. He did not need to. The castle mirrored this dynamic. Guests were welcomed, but never equal. Dinner was theater. Hearst chose the cast. Who sat near him? Who sat far away? Who spoke? Who listened? Conversation flowed where he allowed it, stopped where he did not. Hollywood arrived early. Actors, directors, writers. They were useful. They brought glamour. They brought novelty. They also brought dependency. Hearst owned studios, papers, distribution. If he liked you, coverage followed. If he did not, doors closed. Careers bent. Some broke. His relationship with Marion Davies revealed this clearly. She was an actress. Talented, by many accounts. But Hearst wanted more than success for her. He wanted control over how success looked. He pushed roles, shaped public perception, protected her from criticism, attacked those who questioned her talent. Davies became inseparable from the castle. Not as owner, as symbol, youth, beauty, loyalty. She softened Hearst's image. She absorbed his attention. She paid a price for both. Hearst did not marry her. He kept her close. Forever present, never equal. At San Simeon, Davies performed happiness. Guests noticed. So did staff. The performance never stopped. Hearst watched everything. Even relaxation felt supervised. The castle expanded as his influence peaked. The timing was not accidental. This was not retreat. It was display. But power always attracts resistance. Hearst's papers made enemies. Politicians pushed back. Competitors fought. The public began to tire of excess. The world changed faster than Hearst did. The Great Depression cut deeply. Advertising collapsed. Revenue shrank. Hearst refused to adjust. He maintained operations as if scale alone could defy reality. The castle kept consuming money. Construction continued, then paused, then resumed, never finished. Hearst borrowed against his future. Loans stacked, assets mortgaged. The illusion held, barely. Those around him noticed the shift. Invitations continued, but fewer. The tone changed. Lavish, but strained. Hearst did not admit weakness. Ever. Behind closed doors, decisions narrowed. Costs scrutinized. Projects delayed, but never abandoned. Abandonment felt like defeat. Control mattered more than comfort. As age crept in, Hearst withdrew inward. Physically weaker, emotionally tighter. The castle became less a stage and more a fortress. The rooms grew quieter. The staff remained. The silence deepened. Hearst had built San Simeon to command the horizon, to look down on the Pacific, to feel above consequence. But consequence arrived anyway, quietly, patiently. The power he accumulated did not vanish. It thinned. It fractured. It moved elsewhere. The castle stood, but it no longer grew. What remained was appetite, unfulfilled, endless. Hearst had shaped a world to obey him, but no world obeys forever. To understand what happened next, you have to look beyond the man, to the people who came, the performances they staged, and the cost of maintaining illusion long after belief began to fail. San Simeon was not just a home. It was a system, and systems always reveal their cracks. San Simeon was never quiet by accident. Silence was a choice, and noise was a tool. Hearst understood this. The castle was not built for privacy. It was built for observation. Every visit was orchestrated, every moment framed. Guests arrived with anticipation. They came by train, then by car, then up the hill. The climb mattered. It separated the ordinary world from Hearst's. By the time guests reached the summit, they were already impressed, already receptive. Arrival was ceremonial. Staff appeared. Bags vanished. Rooms were assigned. Nothing was discussed. Everything was assumed. Life at San Simeon followed a script. Wake times were fixed. Meals were scheduled. Activities announced, not requested. Guests adapted quickly. They learned the rhythm. Breakfast was informal, in appearance only. It took place at long tables. Conversation stayed light. Politics avoided, unless Hearst initiated it. Criticism was rare, not because guests lacked opinions, but because opinions carried consequences. The afternoons belonged to leisure. Swimming, tennis, horseback rides, all supervised, all visible. Even relaxation felt performative. Hearst watched from a distance, sometimes from a chair, sometimes from a balcony, sometimes through others. Dinner was the center of gravity, formal, predictable, unavoidable. Guests dressed accordingly. Seating arrangements appeared each evening, carefully calculated. Where you sat told you who you were. Near Hearst meant favor. Distance suggested uncertainty. Patterns were noticed. Adjustments discussed in whispers. Conversation at dinner was never spontaneous. Hearst controlled the pace. He asked questions. He interrupted. He redirected. When he spoke, others listened. When he stopped, others waited. Laughter mattered. The right kind. Too loud felt desperate. Too restrained felt disloyal. Guests learned to calibrate themselves. Hollywood fit easily into this environment. Actors understood performance. Directors understood framing. Writers understood implication. They were comfortable here. Too comfortable. Hearst needed Hollywood. And Hollywood needed Hearst. He owned papers. He owned studios. He owned influence. Favorable coverage meant careers advanced. Unfavorable silence meant stagnation. Everyone knew this. No one said it aloud. San Simeon became neutral ground. Deals were not signed, but alliances were formed. Opinions tested. Reputations reinforced. Politicians came too. Governors, senators, advisors. They arrived as guests. They left as participants. Hearst did not ask directly. He never had to. His interests were visible, repeated, echoed in print weeks later. Some visitors later denied the influence. Others remembered it clearly. The castle had a way of clarifying loyalties. Marion Davies remained at the center, always present, always smiling, always accommodating. She hosted when Hearst withdrew. She smoothed tensions. She absorbed discomfort. She made the atmosphere feel lighter than it was. Davies was liked, genuinely, which made her role more difficult. She was both guest and fixture, both performer and property. The castle asked much of her. Constant visibility, constant charm, no space to retreat. She delivered anyway. Staff noticed the strain. So did guests. Few commented. Courtesy demanded silence. Behind the scenes, labor multiplied. Servants rose before dawn. They prepared rooms that would be dismantled by evening. Tables set, cleared, set again. Nothing at San Simeon was efficient. Efficiency would have implied limits. Limits were unacceptable. The kitchens operated like factories. Food prepared in excess. Much discarded. Presentation mattered more than consumption. Wine flowed. Rare bottles opened, not always finished. Symbol mattered more than taste. Every gesture reinforced abundance. Even waste was curated. Guests sometimes stayed for weeks, some longer, few indefinitely. Eventually, most were dismissed. Politely, invitations stopped arriving. Phones went unanswered. Departure felt sudden and personal. San Simeon did not eject guests loudly. It let them fade. As years passed, the guest lists shifted. Fewer politicians, fewer studio heads. The tone changed. The performances continued. But the audience shrank. Hearst noticed. He adjusted the script. Tried harder. Spent more. Invited louder voices. But influence does not return on demand. The castle remained impressive. But impressions fade when repeated too often. What had once felt exclusive began to feel routine. Behind the spectacle, cracks widened. Money tightened. Control narrowed. The system still functioned, but it required more effort, more explanation, more denial. San Simeon was still a stage, but the lights dimmed, and the applause thinned. The illusion could be maintained, but not forever, because every performance has a cost. And that cost is eventually collected. To see it clearly, you have to look below the dining room, past the guests, past the spectacle, to the labor that kept the illusion alive. That is where the castle's true weight becomes visible. Every illusion requires labor. At San Simeon, that labor never rested. Before guests woke, staff were already moving. Corridors filled quietly, lights adjusted, floors polished. Nothing appeared accidental, because nothing was. The castle required constant attention, not seasonal, constant. Stone cracked in heat, tile loosened in cold, pipes failed. Electrical systems faltered. Everything aged faster on the hill. Salt air did not forgive. Maintenance was invisible by design. Guests were not meant to see effort, only results. Servants used hidden staircases, narrow corridors, doors placed to avoid eye contact. Their presence was functional, their absence preferred. Many lived nearby, in modest housing. Far below the grandeur they sustained, they rose early, returned late, repeated the routine. The work was physical, heavy, endless. Furniture moved daily, paintings cleaned, objects handled with care. They did not receive themselves. Turnover was high, fatigue accumulated, injuries occurred, some documented, most absorbed quietly. The castle did not pause for illness. Someone always filled the gap. As the years passed, the burden increased, not because the castle grew, but because the money thinned. The Great Depression did not spare Hearst. Advertising collapsed. Subscriptions fell. Credit tightened. Hearst responded with denial. He maintained scale, maintained spectacle, maintained the illusion of abundance. Costs were deferred. Bills renegotiated. Loans extended. But labor cannot be deferred forever. Construction slowed, then stopped. Rooms remained unfinished. Walls unpainted. Plans abandoned mid-thought. Julia Morgan continued working. Revising, adjusting, scaling back without saying so. Hearst noticed. He disliked it. Money flowed unevenly now. Suppliers waited. Staff worried. Payments arrived late, then later. The castle still functioned, but only barely. Guests continued to arrive, but fewer. The dinners continued, but smaller. The wine still poured, but more carefully. Behind the scenes, tension rose. Staff noticed changes first. Fewer replacements, more responsibility, less margin for error. The system relied on obedience. And obedience strained under uncertainty. Hearst refused to leave. San Simeon became less a retreat and more a refuge. As age weakened him, his grip tightened. Decisions centralized. Trust narrowed. Marion Davies remained. She adjusted. She adapted. She carried more than before. But the weight showed. Eventually, the math became unavoidable. Creditors intervened. Assets were scrutinized. Control slipped. In 1937, Hearst lost financial independence. A trustee took over. Spending was monitored. Decisions reviewed. For a man built on control, this was collapse. The castle changed immediately. Staff reduced. Construction halted completely. Rooms closed. Lights dimmed. The illusion fractured. Hearst stayed, but the castle no longer obeyed him. World War II accelerated the decline. Travel restricted. Resources rationed. Guests stopped coming. San Simeon emptied slowly, not dramatically, quietly. Hearst's health failed. He left the hill, reluctantly. He never returned. The castle remained, silent, expensive, unfinished. After Hearst's death, the question surfaced openly: what to do with it? The estate could not sustain itself. Maintenance costs were crushing. The illusion required funding no one possessed. Eventually, the state of California stepped in. San Simeon became public, a monument, a museum. The rooms were preserved, the objects cataloged, the labor reclassified as history. Visitors arrived. They marveled. They photographed. They moved on. Few asked about the cost. But the cost remained, embedded in stone, in systems, in silence. Hearst Castle survived, but it did not escape consequence. What was once private power became public memory. What was once control became preservation. The castle still watches the Pacific, still stands above the horizon, still unfinished. Not because it lacks caretakers, but because it was never meant to end. The appetite that built it had no conclusion, and that is the secret the hill still keeps. Grandeur is easy to build. Sustainability is not. After Hearst left the hill, silence took over. Not the peaceful kind, the uneasy kind. San Simeon no longer had an owner in practice, only responsibility Rooms stood ready for guests who would never arrive. Beds remained made, tables set and reset, lights turned on and off without purpose. The castle had been built for motion, for conversation, for noise. Without it, the place felt exposed. Maintenance crews remained, smaller now, focused only on survival. Leaks patched, stone reinforced, damage slowed, not stopped. The estate hemorrhaged money. There was no illusion left to protect, only reality. In 1948, the decision was made. Hearst Castle would be transferred to the state of California. It was not an act of generosity. It was necessity. Private wealth could no longer carry private excess. The handover marked a shift. Power gave way to preservation. Control gave way to caretaking. The castle became public, but it did not become accessible. Not really. Tours were curated, paths restricted, stories simplified. Visitors saw splendor, not systems. They saw marble, not maintenance. They saw pools, not payrolls. They heard about celebrities, not workers. They learned about ambition, not exhaustion. The castle became something safer, a monument, a spectacle without risk. Its sharp edges dulled, its contradictions softened. What had once been personal obsession was now cultural artifact. Yet the structure resisted closure. Rooms remained unfinished, plans incomplete, drawings unanswered. Hearst Castle exists in permanent suspension, neither alive nor dead. The Neptune pool still glows, but it was rebuilt, repaired, reimagined. The Roman pool still dazzles, but it cracks, always cracking. The hill shifts, the earth moves, the stone responds. Preservation is endless. Every year requires millions, public money now. The question never fully answered is why? Why preserve this? Why sustain it? Why keep alive something built on imbalance? The answer is uncomfortable. Because it reflects us. Hearst Castle is not unique. It is extreme, but not unique. It is what happens when resources obey will, when scale replaces restraint, when power forgets limits. It is a record of a moment when America believed excess meant permanence. It didn't. Yet the castle endures. Because we choose to let it. Visitors walk the same halls, pause in the same rooms, hear the same stories, but the silence remains. You can feel it. Between footsteps, between facts, between admiration and unease. Hearst Castle does not ask to be loved. It asks to be understood. It was never finished because the idea behind it had no ending. And now it stands as a warning disguised as beauty, not about one man, not about wealth alone, but about appetite. And what happens when nothing tells it to stop? The hill still watches the Pacific, still holds its stone, still waits. Not for Hearst, not for guests, for meaning. And that is something no amount of money can complete.